Hello, good morning, and good afternoon. Today, welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club on LinkedIn Live, and thank you for taking time from your busy day to join us. This is Women in Manufacturing. It's a weekly conversation on topics around Industry 4.0 with a focus on tech and manufacturing. It's a space to discuss the perspectives and challenges of women at work and at home. And our topic of discussion today is titled Preparing Regional Economies for Industry 4.0 Adoption. And our guest of honor is Erica Fitzpatrick. She's a program manager and on the industry and innovation team at Team Neo. And we will introduce her just momentarily. I am Grace Donovan. I'm an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder. When I'm not here supporting my fellow co-founders, I work for a Detroit-based technology company called Andonics. It provides connectivity and real-time data solutions for operations on the front lines. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow Industry 4.0 Club co-founder, Mike Ungar. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Grace.
Thank you for tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Grace. So I'm also an Industry 4.0 co-founder. We've been involved in the club now for just over a year now, so it's been an exciting journey for us. Prior to that, I was retired from Michelin North America after spending 35 years with them, where I worked in a variety of roles, supporting continuous improvement, operations, a little bit of finance, and HR. And today, I'm a business coach and executive coach, helping business leaders to improve their profitability. So with that, back to you, Grace, and let you introduce Erica.
Thank you very much, Mike. Today, as I mentioned, we're really excited to have our special guest, Erica Fitzpatrick, who's joining us live from Cleveland. Erica, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to give you the front and center stage. So we'd love if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then as well, your professional journey to manufacturing Industry 4.0 and ultimately Team Neo.
Sure. Thank you. Really excited to be joining you guys today. So a little bit about me. I like to start way back when I became a pastry chef right out of high school, because that was how I was going to change the world and change Cleveland in specific, and build the region by bringing great food and therefore people to the region. And that's kind of what was my desire. My kind of grounding desire has always been, how can I make Cleveland a better place? So I quickly realized that was not the most fun thing. It was much better as a hobby. And I went back to school and got my bachelor's in liberal arts, which I like to say is a choose your own degree. And, just learned about a lot of different things and really couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I said, I just want to save the world. Can I be a superhero? And then I found out I could do my master's degree in nonprofit administration. And so I said, I can be a superhero and kind of change the world. So after that, I graduated from Cleveland State with that degree and started working for the Boy Scouts of America. And what I was doing with the Boy Scouts was workforce development. So the Boy Scouts have a best kept secret in scouting program called Exploring, which is all about hands-on opportunities for students to explore different career fields. Mostly you'll see a lot of police and fire exploring programs. So students can, they get to ride along, they get to wear the uniform, they get to, do a lot of practicing of what the police officers and firefighters do. But we also saw this need to expand that for other in-demand careers. And so that was kind of my first taste of manufacturing. We started a program here in Cleveland with SwageLock for students to explore engineering. And so they weren't making high pressured valves. during that program, they were making Rube Goldberg machines and building 3D printers. But we, it was a sellout program. It was every in the fall and the spring. We do 8 weeks of that. They'd come to the manufacturing facility, and even though they weren't, building the high pressure valves, they got to go in the labs and see how that worked. They got to learn about project management. They got to learn that manufacturing wasn't this, dark, dirty, scary field that everybody thinks it is. So that was just a wonderful experience. And then following that, I went back to my roots at Cleveland State and worked with the IoT Collaborative. So that's a collaborative between Cleveland State University and Case Western Reserve University about connected devices. But in that, we worked with a lot of small to medium manufacturers, and we're working with a lot of IIoT. And so that was my first taste to the world of IIoT. And so all of that came together when I joined Team Neo in August of 2020, working as our program manager for our innovation clusters, which, we're going to talk about a little bit more, but we cover 18 counties across Northeast Ohio. We are the regional economic development organization, and we provide companies with a variety of different ways of helping them with the ultimate goal of prosperity for Northeast Ohio and building the region. So I ended up right where I wanted to be and just didn't know it at, 17 in high school.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's those, kind of lived experiences that really ultimately kind of lead us where we end up. I feel very much the same in the sense that, I too wanted to have an impact on the area where I worked in, and that led me to economic development. And a huge chunk of that is manufacturing. It's often a big part that's not necessarily talked about. So that's why when we were when we had the opportunity to meet last week, and you mentioned the Boy Scouts, that was so exciting. Just because as a former Girl Scout and as unfortunately a disillusioned Girl Scout, I was really excited and also disappointed to know that exists for the Boy Scouts, but very exciting for future generations to get their hands on, because as you mentioned, it's a great, well-kept secret, but it's also no longer just the Boy Scouts. It's open to everyone.
That's right. Yeah, that was a big change we saw in 2019. Cub Scouts, they invited girls into the program a little bit before that. Exploring has had females in the program since 1970. So nobody knows that, but that's been happening for a really long time. And then the older program, Boy Scouts, for the older high school students, that they initiated girls in 2019. But I had the same experience. I grew up in a scouting family, so it was amazing to me that I had never heard about this program. And I kind of got to watch from the sidelines. So getting to work for the organization, I was like, I'm in.
Yes, I've got it in. Well, that's really cool. And again, to the audience listening in, definitely go check that out if you have kids that are of age to participate in that program. I certainly will be doing that for my family in the future. So I want to then kind of move into a little bit more about Team Neo and its role in the Northeast Ohio economy, and kind of the role that third-party organizations play, right? Because in manufacturing, oftentimes, entrepreneurs, company leaders, and then just manufacturing staff, we often have, I say we as the royal we, we're in the weeds. We're fighting through things every day, and it's sometimes hard to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. So to remain competitive in a global economy, we know that innovation will be increasingly important to how we manufacture, including the products we produce and the processes that we employ. So can you tell us a little bit more about NEO's innovation clusters that you mentioned in your introduction, and how they're helping regional economies like Northeast Ohio be successful and build competitive advantages?
Sure. So in 2016, Team Neo started down this pathway of innovation clusters with an additive manufacturing roadmap. And so the roadmap was not a technology roadmap as far as, here are the exact ways your company can implement this technology, but rather a commercialization roadmap. So if the region adopts these technologies, what could be the impact? So out of that road mapping process came the initiative to start the additive manufacturing cluster of Northeast Ohio. So that went on for a couple of years. Youngstown, Ohio, in that region, we just have a ton of 3D printing companies, additive manufacturing that's happening, but also companies that are making the printers. So it's a powerhouse for additive manufacturing. So kind of off of that success in 2018, we did a IIoT roadmap to say, I think this is the next big bet for Northeast Ohio, because we have just a huge legacy of manufacturing in Northeast Ohio. But as you mentioned, we have to remain competitive in this global economy. And so if our manufacturers don't start adopting different technologies, they're not necessarily going to make it. We're not going to be able to compete with not just other countries, but the rest of this country. So an initiative that came out of that roadmap was to start the Smart Manufacturing Cluster. So as far as the Smart Manufacturing Cluster goes, in Northeast Ohio, in our 18 county region, we have 7,700 manufacturing facilities. Now, some of those are owned by the same company, but I think manufacturing touches about 1 in every 10 people in Northeast Ohio. So everybody's connected. And what we aim to do with our Smart Manufacturing Cluster, and now our additive manufacturing cluster came in under the umbrella of our Smart Manufacturing Cluster. So we still have a huge focus on additive manufacturing. But what we aim to do is be a platform for manufacturers, for education, for networking, and for connection. And so we are aligned with Magnets, that's our local MEP, with their smart manufacturing, the manufacturing blueprint for Northeast Ohio. And that kind of goes on 4 main pillars. So transformation, which is all about Industry 4.0 and getting those technologies into the manufacturers. Innovation, which is all about new product innovation. Leadership and talent, which are 2 other big topics in manufacturing. Yeah. And so what we do is we align everything we do with those 4 pillars. And the other thing is that we've created a partner network. So there are a lot of these third party organizations, nonprofits that are, or educational institutions that want to help manufacturers. And that's kind of sometimes can be a lot of noise for manufacturers, right? That they're getting emails from 7 different organizations that all seem to be doing kind of the same thing. And how can you help me? So we see the cluster as kind of that umbrella that they can recognize our cluster logo on all of our partners events and say, oh, okay, this is trusted. And these people are all working together. So, we said we have the same customer. We want, our customers, manufacturers, we all want the same thing. We all want them to be better, faster, cheaper, so that we can, create more in the region. So that's what we aim to do with the cluster. We have a resource library on our website, a use case database for manufacturers to go through. So that's kind of that education portion. We have our partner network. We can connect manufacturers with our nonprofit partners as well as solution providers. So, companies that help manufacturers. And then we do some events. So that's another opportunity for not just to have, opportunities for education, but also for networking with other manufacturers. And then finally, we have our readiness assessment, which is it's a free confidential assessment. It takes about 10 minutes. Manufacturers can go on there and take it, answering about 28 multiple choice questions. And we provide insights on all of those questions as it relates to their digital maturity and where they are on the smart manufacturing spectrum. And then once they've taken that assessment, they have the opportunity to meet with us or one of our partner organizations for, kind of an in-depth assessment, or, to go over that assessment in depth and then kind of see what's next. So they can either be happy with the insights, or we can start a pilot project, or sometimes there's a manufacturer that's got a bunch of pilots and they're ready to scale. So that's our goal, is to help that process.
That's pretty amazing. That's an awful lot of structure.
You stay busy.
Yeah, to support manufacturers. Just to dig in a bit more on that, from your own experience so far, what's been the thing that's a lot of resources? Where do most manufacturers seem to be spending their time? Is there any one area that seems to get a lot more attention than another because that's a bigger bang for the buck for manufacturers?
Well, as you might guess, when we go out, especially when we go out and talk to manufacturers, talent, right? So right now, talent is the big need, and that's kind of the first thing that we hear, and often the last thing that we hear also. So what we're finding is that manufacturers aren't necessarily going and searching for the technologies unless it's related to something else they're doing. So if they get, a government contract, they're going to start looking into cybersecurity to make sure that they're up to the standards. Or if they become a supplier for an OEM, the OEM wants them to automate the line or to, run some analysis on their equipment, that's when they're going out and looking for the technologies. And then, so the other way we're seeing that they're really relating to the work that we're doing is through the supply chain. So we just put on a conference around the electric vehicle supply chain. And we did that about 2 weeks ago. We had 370 people come, and 60% of those were manufacturers, right? So
Wow.
we snuck in all of the information about the technologies, but we found that they're really searching for how can they get engaged in that supply chain.
No, that's really amazing. Do you have a particular? I know you went through in Northeast Ohio. In fact, if I could just say it, NEO stands for Northeast Ohio, right? That's just
Yes.
to make sure, because I know you talk about Project NEO, but it seems obvious to you, but maybe not to our listeners. So, when you talk about industry clusters and what's the primary? You mentioned electronic vehicles. What's the primary manufacturing in that part of the country? I don't know if you've already mentioned that or not.
Yeah, so we actually looked at it from 3 perspectives. So we looked at the auto industry, aerospace, and also charging. So we're starting to see a lot of charging manufacturers. There are some battery manufacturers in Northeast Ohio, and then there are actually a few vehicle OEMs in Northeast Ohio.
And you mentioned that there were, I think you said 7,700 manufacturers.
Manufacturing facilities. So
Wow.
a few of those are probably owned by the same company, but yeah, I would guess about 7,000 manufacturers in our 18 county region.
That's amazing. And I know a lot of them are probably small to mid-size and not that large. What's driving? Are they engaged in Industry 4.0, or are they seem to be slow to get into that adoption of that technology?
Yeah, they're pretty slow to get into it, right? So when you think about the big manufacturers, a lot of them have a whole department that's doing. They're getting engaged in Industry 4.0, but the smaller manufacturers are just trying to keep up with the demands. A lot of manufacturers, especially following COVID, are seeing an uptick in their business, and they're trying to catch up. And they've got, some of them are at capacity for the next 3 years as far as contracts, right? Which is a great problem to have. But where we really see that they start to get interested in any type of smart manufacturing is when we talk about talent, right? So I can't find enough people. I want to hire somebody to tape boxes 8 hours a day. Even if you're paying $40 an hour, I don't know how exciting it is to tape boxes for 8 hours a day. You might be able to do it for a week or two, but then you might go crazy. So there's a way where we could say, we can automate that process. We can help you put in a robot or a cobot that can do that. And now you can bring in a higher skilled employee, or you can upskill some of your employees. So that's something that Team Neo helps with, is getting manufacturers into programs for upskilling and being able to help the employees that are already there and give them a new set of skills. So that's kind of where we're seeing it, is when we can make a recommendation to help with another problem that they have.
You mentioned like taping boxes for 8 hours. I don't know. Boston Dynamics is something that was really cool that we featured a couple weeks ago in a different conversation. Just released a new robot that can like handle packages. I don't know if they're taping them yet, but they're certainly like loading them onto boxes and off. And so it's the folks that were doing that job of unloading trucks and loading trucks and just moving boxes around all day. Now there's a robot that's able to do that at like a rate of 600 boxes per hour. And the folks that were formerly, loading and unloading these boxes are now the technicians for this robot. So I think that's like a perfect example of what you're mentioning of, we want to retain talent and attract, folks that are going to be interested or have the skills to be able to operate these kinds of machinery. But yeah, everyone looks for a purpose and something that's really exciting in their job. And to work with a robot is much more exciting than working with boxes, like to your point. So it is really two sides of a similar coin.
Well, yeah, and they also hit that capacity issue, right? Because how many, say it's taping boxes or screwing caps on bottles, how many can a person do in an hour versus how many can if you automate the process. So now you're upping your capacity also, so you're able to kind of hit some of those higher goals that you might not have been able to in the past. And I know there's also a stigma for a lot of our small manufacturers. If we just if we have a business development team that goes out and meets with manufacturers on a daily basis. We meet with about 700 manufacturers a year. And if you just walk into the manufacturer and say, hey, why don't you implement this technology? It's a little bit scary, I think. And, I know there's been some bad experiences for a lot of manufacturers with, ERP systems and being down for many days and huge expenses, not realizing that you can just do a pilot project in IoT in Industry 4.0. That's what's really nice about it, right? You can implement new technologies in a small way and see the benefit. So, that's where we try to not just walk in and offer a solution without knowing the problem. So as soon as we can hear what the problems are, and sometimes I know there's a company we worked with that makes rolls. Right. And so they were realizing that they were having a lot of waste with their dough. And so they were able to bring in some automation to solve that problem. So that's, I think, where we really see the engagement coming from the small mid-sizes when we can help solve a problem through Industry 4.0.
I thought you were going to say when you can serve food.
But that too, right?
Yeah. Anyway,
They like that.
The role sound interesting too. Yeah, a dough manufacturer, I guess somebody who makes bread could certainly help you provide the food for everybody. That's interesting. So beyond being able to solve a problem, what are some of the other obstacles for small and mid-sized manufacturers to get into the adoption of Industry 4.0? What other things are you seeing?
Yeah. So time is definitely a part of it, right? They're so busy right now that they don't even have time to look into these options. And then the other thing are some supply chain issues, right? It's hard right now for a lot of the manufacturers to even get the raw materials they need to manufacture their product. Mm-hmm. So they're off worrying about that and not able to think about implementing new technologies. And then the other part of it is really that fear of, a lot of these small to mid-sized manufacturers in Northeast Ohio have been around for, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And they've done things in a certain way. Maybe it's the third generation running it, and they just aren't really that interested because they're like, hey, we got it. We got our niche. We're making our widget, and we're going to just keep doing that. So those are kind of the main stops that I see that manufacturers are having a hard time with getting excited about implementing new technologies.
Yeah, that's something that I'm based just a little bit north of you in Michigan, and that's certainly something that I see here as well. It's certainly not something that's just indicative of Northeastern Ohio. That's certainly, I think, a challenge that a lot of small and medium manufacturers face when it comes to adopting technologies. And this is something where I think that the initiative that Team Neo has around lighthouses is really exciting. So I'd love for us to dive in there. But quickly, I just wanted to kind of cite a statistic that the manufacturing network, or magnet, that you referred to earlier, they estimate that only 10% of Ohio manufacturers are actively looking at Industry 4.0 technologies. So things like IoT, AI, and analytics that can drive real-time data and exchange. So it's a very small percent of these companies that are actively looking for this. Again, because a lot of it's just we're in the weeds, we're trying to stay alive with supply chain disruptions and talent. But they might not know that a lot of these technologies are available and really affordable. It's not going to take a 2-year ERP implementation like things used to. If we kind of take a step back from technology, it changes in an instant. It's changing very, very quickly. So how how are lighthouses kind of changing this perception? And can you tell us a little bit more about what lighthouses are?
Yeah, sure. So, one of our main goals are de-risking technology for manufacturers. So showing them, here's this return on investment you can have. It's not so scary. You can do a small project. And so, as you mentioned, Magnet is our manufacturing, one of our partners here in Northeast Ohio. They're the MEP for our region, and we work very closely together. So as I mentioned, they put together a manufacturing blueprint for Northeast Ohio, and that kind of says, the 4 pillars I mentioned before. If we really kind of lean into these, here's some changes that we could see, and we'll all prosper and be very happy. So one of the things they've implemented are the Lighthouse program. So what a Lighthouse is it's a manufacturer who's willing to put in a public display of Industry 4.0, just to put it pretty simply. So sometimes Magnet has helped them implement that technology, and sometimes it's just a technology that they've already implemented. And the goal is to showcase it. So, kind of looking at the lighthouse as something you look for on the dark sea, right? And you're looking for your guide. So we look at these manufacturers who have become lighthouses as the guides. And what we'll be doing starting this summer is a kind of roadshow, right? So manufacturers will actually be able to come into other manufacturing facilities, probably not ones that they're competing with, but maybe ones that are in a different area than they are. And they'll be able to see these technologies at work on the factory floor, right? So there's a big difference between going to a conference and having an expo floor and seeing a demonstration of one of these technologies than actually seeing it in place on the manufacturing floor. So that's what the Lighthouse program aims to do. And, we look to really build that up. We'll be documenting all of the Lighthouse projects. Either, some of them will be videos, some of them will be, case studies, but we really just want to show what's possible and that it's, not as scary as it seems.
Yeah, I think, as someone who worked in a similar area before, where we would also kind of take, business owners and leaders around to do these tours of different facilities, it can make a tremendous impact, because then I think it really cements and kind of brings down to earth the technology that you might see in that expo or that you've read about online, and really see how it's working. You get to talk to the people that are using it, understand what they like or dislike, but then also really see, okay, what has been the real tangible benefit of this technology for this company and this user. And are you able to share an example of how one of those lighthouses like tours has gone for some of your manufacturers?
Well, I will.
I know we didn't prep this.
Yeah, I was going to say I will be in a few weeks. So we're just getting ready to kind of kick off these tours this summer. Magnet has been working behind the scenes for about a year now, working with manufacturers to get the technologies in place, to get them on board. And we're just getting ready to launch the Lighthouse tour. So we'll be doing a webinar later in May that will kind of be a big overview of the program. And then those in-person tours will start in June.
Wow.
Right. Very exciting.
Yeah, so you mentioned it earlier, if I can segue that just to something else that's on my mind, and you said it earlier, that a lot of these small to mid-sized manufacturers are struggling with supply chain and personnel issues. Maybe we can take the first one, supply chain. How is this new technology in Industry 4.0 helping them deal with the supply chain, or is it at all? To be honest with you.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that in different ways. So there's a lot of companies, if they're willing to implement some Industry 4.0, there's a lot of tracking that can be done now, right? So say there's a manufacturer that has 5 different facilities across America, or even anywhere in the world, right? So if they have a system in place where they can track their product, and they can know where it is, and they get an order, right? So they get an order from their Cleveland facility. Somebody orders 78 widgets, and they don't have that because they didn't have the parts to make those, but their California facility has those 78 widgets, and they're overstocked right now, right? So somebody can pull that up on a screen and see it and be able to, in the moment, reroute it, right? See that, okay, we're going to be anticipating that we're going to need more of this widget in a different part of the country, where in the past, a lot of manufacturers, and I've seen this even at some of the bigger manufacturers that you go to, they're doing everything on paper, right? You look and, you walk in and they've got these 17 crates stacked up and each one has a slip of paper on it, which says where it's going. And to me, my mind was blown when I saw that. I'm like, that's something that you have, like you don't just have like a little tag in there that you scan and it's in a computer and you know where things are. But no, that a lot of them don't, because they just haven't even had the time to implement it, or, they haven't thought about those implications of, well, if we are tracking every piece of, every widget that we make and we know where they are at all times, we don't have to turn down that order because we don't have it in stock at this location.
That's interesting. So it's brought the technology's brought the companies, let's say, closer together, the different facilities that might be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Any interesting developments between companies that you see, or between supplier and manufacturer that you could comment on?
Yeah, I guess just kind of as far as new technologies. So, I mentioned we had our electric vehicle supply chain conference, and we had Lincoln Electric get up on stage, right? You wouldn't think of Lincoln Electric, they do welding equipment. Why are they at this electric vehicle event? But what they realize is that their DC fast charging for their welding equipment can be used for electric vehicles. So now they're looking to put in a whole new line and start making electric vehicle chargers. They're still figuring it out, but that's kind of one of those areas where a manufacturer and a supplier that wouldn't normally work together are seeing a connection because of technologies. And it's not necessarily transformation as far as, the industry 4.0, but it's more of that innovation side of it. So we're seeing a lot of that in Northeast Ohio. And I think one thing that's really special about Northeast Ohio is the level of collaboration between different manufacturers. And partially, I'm going to give our team a lot of props, but we're meeting with all these manufacturers, we're hearing different things and making those connections to say, oh, I heard this at this one company, I think we can make a connection, and we're able to introduce them and kind of get those conversations going.
Well, you guys are like you're being a catalyst, which is really, I mean, that's if you can connect people who are normally in their silos with their head down, working hard every day to meet customer needs, and you can make it easy for them to make those connections. That's huge. That really is really huge.
Yeah, and absolutely, as silos, those small to mid-sized manufacturers, they are heads down because they are just trying to keep up with what they're doing. So, we love to like hear stories like that of when they're connecting and they're able to see things from a different perspective.
What about on the people side? So you mentioned earlier where a lot of times people, automating, for example, mundane tasks is one area where Industry 4.0 can help with the people shortage. What are you guys doing to help train the workforce for the future? Is there anything that you guys are involved in to help the folks coming out of high school and maybe trade schools or in college be ready to move into a manufacturing environment?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that's something that Team Neo has gotten involved in over the past couple of years. So we have a report called the Aligning Opportunities Report. And what that looks at is the mismatch between the jobs that are needed and what people are graduating with, what credentials they have. And so we're seeing these massive gaps in manufacturing. So that led us to creating a few other reports. We have a misaligned opportunities reports. It's all about, racial equity and looking at the mismatch there in jobs. And then in 2021, we did the lost opportunities report, which is looking at the mismatch for women. But in addition to this work, as we started looking at this, we realized, it's almost too late to engage students in college to get into these manufacturing careers. It's absolutely too late, right? I know when I went to college, I was going to be a pastry chef. Like, you couldn't have changed my mind until I did it. But
there's also not a lot of manufacturing and engineering at liberal arts. Speaking from a liberal arts, graduate. Yeah.
That's right. And,
Mhm.
I never heard the word manufacturing in high school ever. I heard engineering, but I didn't know what that meant or like what kind of job you could have or what the opportunities were right where I already lived. So, what we've done, we've partnered with a number of different local organizations to work on this and kind of get the message out there. But we have an emerging talent portal on Team Neo's website. And what that is we look at the in demand careers, and we've put together pages on each of those careers that talk about, what do you need to get into that career? What certifications do you need? What kind of education? What is a median salary that you might make? And then we also have some little like 3-4 minute video vignettes of younger people who are in jobs talking about how they got there, what excites them about it. And then all of these videos and this whole talent emerging talent portal is geared towards 6th through 12th graders. So we've been working really hard to try to get that into some, middle schools, high schools. We've partnered with Junior Achievement to get it into their local programming. Anything that we can do to show young people that manufacturing is not this, dark, scary, dirty job. Because I definitely had that in my mind before I had ever walked into a manufacturer. And as I started walking into manufacturing, onto the floor, I'm like, oh, this looks great. Like some of these places look like it would be a great place to work. And, these people are very skilled. I mean, the clean rooms in some of the manufacturers, I can't even, walk into them. I need, 17 more certifications just to go into some of these areas. So there's really a lot of opportunity, and any way we can help young people see that is good.
Have any of the manufacturers in Northeast Ohio begun internship programs for high school students? Is that something that you've seen happen at all in your area?
Yeah, we do see that. One I can think of, for example, is a company called Jurgens. So they have a internship program. They have an apprenticeship program. Like I mentioned, at Swage Lock, they did our exploring program, which was geared for 11th and 12th graders to come in and see what those opportunities look like. So there are manufacturers that are doing that. We also participate in Manufacturing Day. So a lot of manufacturers that first Friday in October open their doors to high school students to come in and see what careers could look like. And then the other thing that we did last year for the first time is we were involved with the Industry Week Manufacturing and Technology Show that took place in Cleveland last November. We created a half-day experience for students to come out. We
Wow.
had a panel together of different manufacturers to talk about what working in manufacturing is like. They got to go out on the conference expo floor and meet with companies that were there. And then we brought them all back for a lunch with leaders and actually sat them at the tables with leaders from local manufacturers to just talk about what their experiences were, how they got there, and what they loved about their jobs. So I think we had about 60 students from 11 different high schools in Northeast Ohio.
That's great. And I'm sorry, I'm going to poke at one more question. Hopefully, it's one
Sure.
that you're comfortable with. But, sometimes it's not the students that need the conversation, it's their parents. So, are you doing anything for the parents of those students to help them better understand manufacturing when they may not be in manufacturing?
Yeah, I think, our emerging talent portal that we've put together. What we often encourage the students to do is not just, you might watch a few videos while you're at school, but we encourage the teachers to kind of assign the students to watch these at home and share this information with their parents, let them see what's out there. And I think there's a lot of organizations who are trying to spread the word beyond the students, because you're right that a lot of times it's parents that have the view of manufacturing that many of us had, and said, well, I'm not gonna, like, my kid's not gonna work in manufacturing. And so there has to be that shift, not just for the students but also for the parents.
Thank you. Grace?
Yeah, I wanted to ask as well, what do you see kind of as the gender parity of high school students participating in these programs? Because that's another thing that we've discussed a lot, as women in manufacturing, a lot of women tend to kind of fall into these careers and not seek them out as much, but we know that STEM programs and a lot of like educational and academic programming that's heavily focused on manufacturing and engineering will drive women towards this career, really open it up as an option for them. So I'm curious if you're seeing girls begin to participate in a lot of these kind of career days and get excited about manufacturing?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, kind of go back to my experience with the Boy Scouts a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it was a 50-50 split. And a lot of the young ladies that I would talk to in the programs, would say like, yeah, my mom signed me up. My parents signed me up for this program. Some of them really did want to be in the program, but most of them, it was because their parents wanted to sign them up just to be exposed to something. But they really enjoyed it and excelled at these programs, and they saw that they do have an opportunity. And then the other thing would be that we created some programming that was just for young ladies, right? So we partnered with Cleveland State University to do an engineering for women or young women, and that was a program for high school students to come in and learn about careers in engineering. We actually had to expand that program down to middle school students because it was so popular. It was sold out every fall and every spring. Because there was kind of that there's a little bit of uncomfortableness, I think, still for young ladies when they are kind of interested in arts and science. And sometimes there's, just society, right? They don't want to talk about that at school. They don't want to tell their friends that they're doing this program. That was one of the questions we asked them. Have you told your friends at school that you're doing this program? And most of them said no. But they felt comfortable coming to be a part of the program because they saw a room filled with other young ladies that were interested in the same things that they were, and they could be the majority in the room.
Yeah, being a majority, I think, is very important. Or just having kind of, again, that support. That's another thing where we've kind of, as women in manufacturing, we've dived into those statistics a little bit, and when women are the only in the room, the chances that they speak up about their experience or they share it with others is significantly less. So that's really encouraging to hear that they are, they're seeing themselves well represented in those spaces.
Absolutely. And, our, as far as adult women in manufacturing, our organizations, our Women in Manufacturing chapter and our Women in 3D Printing chapter are really popular and well attended, and they're very engaging.
Excellent. So I wanted to ask, so how are you seeing the perceptions of, so we're kind of like switching gears, right? But as we talk about, how Team Neo is helping companies to identify some of the challenges like to their roadmap, of industry like 4.0, or excuse me, industry 4.0 technologies. Talent is of course a big part of that. But what are some of the perceptions around the technology and automation that you're beginning to see, both, again, kind of from the manufacturer's perspective, but also from, prospective students or folks that are looking for jobs in that area?
Yeah. So we'll start with some of the kind of a little bit more negative perceptions, right? So as we talked about, talent is an issue, but we also hear, well, I don't want to automate things because I don't want to lose jobs, right? And so that's one thing that we're constantly saying. It's about creating a higher skilled job for your current employees or for future employees for that pipeline. And then I think as far as like job seekers, there are so many training programs that you can go into right now around there's a huge microelectronics program at one of our local community colleges at Lorain County Community College. That program is full every year. They have, I don't want to say the exact rate, but I think they're like in the 90+% employment rate for people who go through that program. They do they do a lot of apprenticeships or kind of externships for those students. I think it's a required part of that program. So we're seeing the same with Cuyahoga Community College. They have a program for advanced manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of these programs emerge, and because you can just do a couple of courses to get a credential, right? A micro credential. You don't have to do the full 2-year program. We're seeing a lot of interest, and then we're seeing a lot of dollars being put towards training opportunities for job seekers, also for companies to train their staff, but for job seekers, right? So a personal example, my husband, worked for an organization for 20 years, and because of things outside of his control and COVID, right, was unfortunately laid off. And so as he was thinking about, what's next, we looked into a lot of these career training programs. There's coding programs, and all of these things apply to manufacturing and to the technologies that are being put in place. So it's a great time if you want to go into one of those fields. And I think there's a really easy way to get in, and also just the manufacturers want you.
Well, that was going to be kind of like the next part of this question is, are you seeing like manufacturers, also investing in sending their employees to these programs if they know that they need, they're looking to, adopt new technology. We know that we're going to need a new skill set. Are they actively investing in a lot of their workforce?
I think they're seeing it when they know about it. So you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of, like we've talked about, the small and mid-size, they've got their heads down trying to just get the orders complete. And so a lot of manufacturers don't know about these programs. And so that's, one of the things that our business development team talks about with manufacturers is these different training programs, different programs to pay for the training. And then all of our partners in the region who are in economic development, we're constantly spreading these programs and trying to get the word out so that manufacturers will invest in it. And a lot of times they don't have to even invest a ton of their own money because there's programs that, will pay for the training. So as long as they know about it, then they're taking advantage of the program. So it's getting the word out and helping them to see that it's out there.
Oh, Mike, did you have something that you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I was just going to add, so you mentioned funding available. What role is the state playing, the state of Ohio, in helping to have grants available, or just, I mean, you're one region, but I'm imagining there's some state support available as well. Can you talk about that?
So we're the Northeast Ohio regional partner for Jobs Ohio. And so there's funding through Jobs Ohio. There's funding through Ohio Means Jobs. One of the programs is the Tech Cred program. So that's a program that manufacturers can get some of their training funded. The counties are getting involved in it also. So this morning I just learned about a program in Cuyahoga County for training that, they're pretty broad in what it takes to be eligible for this, because that's how important we see getting the training out there. So I would definitely say also the manufacturing sector partnerships they're all throughout Ohio, but so that's funding from the state of Ohio for workforce development, whether that's, just finding talent or also training talent. So Ohio's leaning in.
I know in where I live in South Carolina, we often find, earlier we were talking about getting, increasing the amount of women in manufacturing, for example. In our part of the country, sometimes we find there are really two obstacles. One, transportation, especially because we have, a lot of our factories in more rural areas of the state. And secondly, daycare. Are you seeing similar challenges in your part of the country? And if so, what's happening to help that? And if not, what are the challenges you guys are seeing up there?
Yeah, so definitely, as you mentioned with women, when we were preparing our lost opportunities report, that was one of the things is that women saw when COVID hit that their role was to stop working and stay at home often and, kind of take over the homeschooling that had to happen. And so daycare was the other issue, right? A lot of people couldn't go to work if they didn't have a safe place to see to put their children. So daycare, I'm not sure about that. I'd have to find out a little bit more, but transportation is the other issue, right? So a lot of the manufacturers are not located in the place where the people who would generally want those jobs live. So we've seen some really great collaborations with some of our nonprofit partners and manufacturers who have created transportation, right? So there's a bus that will pick you up in one part of Cleveland and take you to two manufacturers in a different part of Cleveland that's funded partially by this nonprofit organization and funded partially by these manufacturers. So we're starting to see those kind of things, and I think as we talk about it more, that's one of the things that we talk with manufacturers about is well, maybe just right around here there's not people who, or the people who live around here already have role doing something else, and the people that you're really looking to target don't have transportation. So how can we think outside the box and try to create some help with that?
That's great to hear. That's what's going to take some real creative solutions, I think.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we've understood about the shortage of personnel for manufacturing or just in general is a lot of folks, or I'm sorry, in order to attract talent, you've got to go look in places you might not have looked before, which means you've got to go and find solutions so that they can become part of your workforce. So it's great to hear about those creative solutions to transportation. I did have one other question. The idea of adopting technology, and you mentioned it earlier about sometimes people don't want to give up their jobs, so to speak. Are you able to work closely? Your area of the country, there's a pretty strong union base, if I understand right. How do the unions feel about the adoption of Industry 4.0? Are they supportive? Do they collaborate with you on that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I personally have not done a lot of collaboration with the unions. And you're right, unions are a really big part of Northeast Ohio. I haven't heard anything negative from the unions, but I haven't heard anything positive. So I think it's pretty neutral. As long as the companies are treating the workers right, that's kind of the most important thing. I don't think, kind of like a lot of the manufacturers, right? They're just not thinking about the technologies.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've got about 10 minutes left. But just before, we were talking about, some of the things that, third-party organizations like Team Neo are doing really well when it comes to collaboration. So, helping companies find access to funding and these training opportunities and really learn, know more about what programs they can recruit from for really, skilled talent, and how to connect companies that are working on similar problems so that you can create, new products or bring, help companies break into new industries and new opportunities. So those are some of the things that organizations like Team New are doing really well. Love to hear if there's other things that you guys are doing really well as well. But what are some of the gaps that are maybe still left in helping manufacturers advance in Industry 4.0 and really building competitiveness that like Team Neo is working on addressing?
Yeah. So right, we do a lot of things well, right? I'm very a proud member of my organization, and a proud member of kind of our network of organizations in Northeast Ohio. I think we're really trying to get out there and help manufacturers, right? There's things that Team Neo does that are kind of an extension. It might not just be the technology, but when a company's looking to expand, or they need a new facility, or they need a second facility, or attracting companies to Northeast Ohio, and really kind of putting our name out there as, hey, we're the center of excellence. We'd love to be the center of excellence for smart manufacturing. We are a center of excellence already for additive manufacturing. We'd like to be a center of excellence for EV, where people are really looking from outside of our area as like, oh, I need to go learn about this. I have to go to Cleveland, or I have to go to Northeast Ohio to learn about that. So there are a lot of things that are being done really well. I think the biggest gap is just that there's not enough of us to get out there and talk to manufacturers, right? If there's 7,000 manufacturers in our 18 county region, and we have 40% of the manufacturers in Ohio in our 18 counties, but there's the rest of the state. We have other network partners that we work with in the rest of the state, but there's just not enough of us getting out and talking about technology with the manufacturers. And then the other part of that is the indoctrination of Industry 4.0, right? Because what you don't know, you don't know. And a lot of manufacturers don't know about the technologies. They don't know what's possible. They don't know that there isn't always a huge cost to implement, some small things you can do right off the bat. And so I think those are the main gaps, is that a lot of times solution providers end up working with a company and kind of helping them with this whole plan of how they could bring their company up to speed, but they spend the first, say 30 hours working together, just getting the manufacturer the knowledge for how this technology works, or how it can help them, how it can help product quality, or how it can, help losses. There's a lot of learning that needs to take place. And so that's kind of one of the things we're trying to do with our cluster is be the platform, is a place to go to get that knowledge, so that we can kind of get past that step. I think that's the step a lot of manufacturers get stuck at, is there's just so much to learn, and it's overwhelming. And a lot of times the way it's being presented is like a little bit too high level, as far as like the actual technology and how it works.
Yeah, I think too, it's really important to know like where they're getting that information from, right? Of course, there's a lot of companies that are, selling their solutions, and part of that, education is certainly a component of that, but knowing that there's like a trusted source where you can go to get, information from someone who's not, selling you a solution is something that's really valuable as well. And I know that's like a resource that, companies that are providing solutions find very, very valuable. And companies who are seeking solutions also find that very valuable. So that's a really, that's, I think, an important resource that organizations.
We work really closely with our solution provider network. We try to know who the solution providers are. A lot of them are in Northeast Ohio. A lot of them are outside of Northeast Ohio, but just have kind of a big presence here. And whenever we're doing any kind of educational thing together, it's a webinar, an event, we always talk about taking off that sales hat, right? We're just putting on the education hat. And honestly, a lot of the solution providers that we work with are the best educators of this, because they're working with the technology day in and day out. And that's the other thing, is we want to make sure that we are that trusted source, that you don't have to worry that, you're just going to get a sales pitch. Now, the meeting after the meeting, when you're out in the parking lot talking, that's when the time comes that they can say, okay, great, I was really excited learning about that. Let me get your services. But we really just want to be that education portal.
Excellent. Well, we are now kind of coming to the close. So one thing we like to do, just as a wrap up to a lot of these discussions with our guests, is to kind of go around and share some of our takeaways of the conversation of the last hour. So I'll go ahead and start with Mike, and then I will go, and then Erica will close out. So how does that sound, Mike?
That's fantastic. Well, first of all, I've learned a whole lot about Northeast Ohio and what's happening with manufacturers and what you're doing to support them. So it's really impressive. I think I can echo that the way we're going to make progress is by sharing and collaborating. If you believe in the saying, a rising tide raises all ships, clearly supporting each other is the way to go. And it's really impressive what Neo's doing, and we really appreciate learning more about that from you today, Erica. Thank you. Grace?
Pleasure.
Yeah, I get really excited about the Lighthouse initiative that you guys are working on, and we'll certainly be kind of poking around to see if we have similar initiatives here in Michigan, because it is so, I think so much of manufacturing is really tactile, and being able to see things like at work and in progress really drives it home around, the value that technology can bring to the workforce, because you see yourself in different ways. And I'm thinking like yourself as a manufacturer going into an operation and saying, okay, what's similar? What are they doing differently? What are we doing differently? And then learning from each other about how you can, drive forward with innovation, but also just continue to build a better business. And it's just having those opportunities of collaboration. And I think it's during those visits as well, especially if you've got like a group of people going together, just, building those relationships, that's again, strengthening collaboration kind of beyond the reaches of Neo, but Neo's there kind of facilitating it. And that just makes for a really, really strong collaborative economy that's going to go really far. And I think those initiatives definitely need to be highlighted. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing that. It's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes for you guys.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been great. I am really excited about the work that the Industry 4.0 Club is doing also, right? Because I think so much of that, sharing and networking and knowledge building happens in conversations like this, right? It's not always a webinar where we're strictly talking about a particular technology, but it is through this conversation and knowing that you're not really alone, right? So I'm excited to hear about the things that are happening in your areas of the country, and thinking, okay, well now let's see, like I got to go engage the unions. And so there's some things that I definitely have taken from this conversation that I will be looking at how we can expand and serve our manufacturers even more fully than we're trying to now.
That's awesome. Thank you. We're honored. And we're just like, this is why we've formed the Industry 4.0 Club, is precisely to have these conversations and to foster that kind of collaboration. So again, I'd like to thank you for joining us and for joining the Industry 4.0 Club on this topic of preparing regional economies for Industry 4.0 adoption. For everyone who is tuning in live or watching this later, please follow Erica and connect with her on LinkedIn. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the audience today. And if you like conversations like this, look out for more LinkedIn Live shows. And for updates and notifications, we encourage you to follow the Industry 4.0 Club on LinkedIn. We also welcome you to join us on the Clubhouse app. We have rooms daily from Monday to Thursday starting at 12:30, except for Wednesdays, which are hosted by Mike. The fireside chat starts at 11:30 a.m. So we will go ahead and count down, but wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very, very much.